You're listening to the Dear Next Gen podcast with your host, Cece. This show is brought to you by Montage. We're all about bridging gaps between generations through events, stories, and conversations about real stuff. Enjoy these candid chats, and don't forget, your younger self would be proud.
Hello, and welcome back to the Dear Next Gen podcast. Today, my mouth hurts from smiling because I'm joined by Mariah. Welcome to the podcast, Mrs. Mariah Smith. So it's crazy. You've actually been married for what, 5 years?
4 years now.
4 years now.
Yeah. It's like gone by really fast and also not at the same time. It's such a wild thing, but it's been an amazing 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Who would have known that we would just be married?
I know. We would be here 10 years later. It's crazy.
10 years. So I'll give context to how we know each other. We went to high school and all that. But first, I want to know, what advice would you give your younger or your high school self?
Okay. My piece of advice that I would love to go back and give myself is don't be afraid to fail. I just feel like I am someone, just because of my personality, I don't know if it's because of my birth order, I'm like the oldest of 6 kids. I'm like hyper responsible, like hyper rule following. And I think that really contributes to like a fear of failure. And because of that, that has put like limitations on like the dreams I have and like what I think I could do. So yeah, I'd love to like go back in time, tell my younger self, don't be afraid to just like step out and take a risk. And if you fail, it's not the end of the world. It's actually a good thing. So yeah.
Do you think also part of like being the oldest is everybody was watching you do something and then you're the example first and then it keeps going?
Yeah, I think like that could definitely be part of it. Like just the subconscious weight of being like, okay, I got to live a certain way. I got to please my parents and make sure they're happy with me, so that my siblings will like follow my example. So yeah, I think like it's such a real thing for people. And something like, Cece, have you ever heard of growth mindset and fixed mindset?
Kind of, yeah. Elaborate
I feel
for
like,
me.
So when I learned about this, it really like opened up my eyes about this fear of failure and like why I might be like that. So fixed mindset, people with a fixed mindset often will like just do what they're good at because they think, oh, well, I'm good at these things naturally and I'm not good at these things naturally. So an example would be like, I'm good at sports naturally, so I'll always be a person that plays sports, but I'm not very musically inclined, so I'm never even going to try because like that's just not me. Whereas someone with a growth mindset is kind of willing to like delve into things that they might not naturally, like it might not naturally come to them. And they're not afraid of failing the first time because they realize that they can learn it. So public speaking, I feel like is a great example for people. Like that's something that a lot of people are scared of or shy away from. People with a fixed mindset would be like, oh, I'm just not good at public speaking, so I'm just never going to do it. But people with a fixed mindset would say that. But people with a growth mindset would be like, no, I'm going to put myself up there and I'm going to try. And even if it's hard, it's okay because then there's room for improvement and I can get better. And I feel like when I learned the like differentiation between those two, it really helped me be like, wow, and like see how many areas of my life I had a fixed mindset. And then like challenge myself in little ways to adopt that growth mindset.
Yeah, that's probably a big transition, more than just hearing about it, but maybe it just takes hearing it if somebody's listening and who's like, oh, you know what, like when it comes to sports or public speaking or just I'm not naturally organized, so I'll never be organized, or I'm not naturally good with money, so I'll never be good with money. But that's so, I think maybe in high school I was the opposite. I had more of like a growth mindset because the responsibility seemed kind of like there's less stakes if you just like did something. But that's also just the personality that I had that was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna sign up for this, I'm gonna do this. And then almost to the point where I got to like, okay, now I don't know what I truly love or what I'm just doing because I started it and everybody's like, oh, she's gonna do this now. And I'm like, actually,
Yeah,
I was just doing it to like learn or
that's
make a friend.
interesting. Yeah, it's funny, like, and then another like factor of it is people with a fixed mindset, when they fail, they take it really personally. Like they let it be like about their identity. But people with a growth mindset, when they fail, they just realize that's the natural process of learning something.
Whoa, yeah.
And I actually remember, like, do you remember in grade 12, you were like, you need to audition for the musical? And I was like, I don't really want to. And you're like, no, you have to. Everybody gets in. And then
Facts.
I auditioned, and like, for context, I enjoy singing, but I don't really sing in front of people. Like that to me, like it's really anxiety inducing. And so I auditioned, and then I didn't get in.
I'm
And
so
I was
sorry.
like, and of course, because I have a fixed mindset, I took it personally. I was like, I'm never doing something like that again. But it's a good thing for me. It's good to build character and to like put yourself out there and like do something you're not comfortable with, right?
Yeah. It's funny because what you remember from high school is so different than what I remember. I'm like, Mariah was literally good at everything. She
Oh,
could write, she could speak, she could
that's
play
so funny.
sports, she could like do well in school. And then you're like, no, I remember that time I didn't make it in the musical. I'm like, I didn't make any team. I didn't make anything at all. But I just remember being like, she's killing it. Like I remember you sent a message when it was just like a journal entry about me and our friend Val. And even though it was 10 years ago, I feel like I could be taken back into like that room with the computers where you guys were writing things. And I was like, my friends are the best writers in the whole world.
Aww.
They're so good at expressing themselves. But that is an area, I was thinking about that today, where I just let it be your guys' thing. You both and Sam, I was like, they can write, they can express themselves. And like, I come from a French school, so I don't know how to like use these words or spell properly. Like now there's so much like I can just use Grammarly and I feel much more confident that I can send a proper email. But that was a place where I just gave up fast because I was like, this is their thing and I can just, cheer them on, but I don't even need to try. Even though I actually realized I felt really inclined to express myself in writing. I just never ever did. And I think you were one of the first people who was like, yeah, I journal. Like I write about my life. I'm like, what do you have to write? We're in high school. Like
Probably not much.
it's cute to read back now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
You're reflecting on it. So yeah, Mariah and I both went to the same high school near the end of our high school experience, which I don't know how common that is, but at the school we went to, it was not really common, I think.
Yeah, so I came to the school in grade 12 just for the last year, and then you came in grade 10?
Yeah, in the middle of like a school year, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it's an interesting experience to have because in that year, like I feel like I made some pretty like solid friendships. Like the fact that we're here 10 years later is pretty awesome. But then also there's like so many people that I just barely got to know because it was just like if you don't have the classes with them or anything, you don't really know them in that
year.
You
know of them, but they're just in your grad class. And I was just on a podcast for one of our interns. He's 16, I believe, 15 or 16. And he just posted a promo today. It was like, she was in high school when Snapchat was created. I was like,
he said that?
Yeah, well, I said it in the interview. And then he's like put that little snippet out. And I was thinking,
that's so funny.
I was like, I think Mariah will remember. Like, I actually know like where I was in the school when everybody downloaded it for the very first time.
I remember, oh, of course. I was in grade 11, I think, when it came out, and I avoided. I'm a classic like late adopter to things, so
but you're an intentional adopter.
Yeah, I definitely didn't download it right away, and then eventually I did. And I remember thinking, this is the stupidest thing ever. Why wouldn't I just send my friends pictures on iMessage? I remember thinking that.
Yeah.
And this is when Snapchat, like, didn't have texting.
Yeah, it was so simple. It didn't have
stories. It just had that, like, sketchy thing where you could see the top 3 people that everyone else was Snapchatting, which caused so much drama.
So much drama for relationships, friendships.
Yeah. And then I just thought it was silly, so I actually deleted it, and then I got it back, I think, post high school as an adult. I'm actually shocked it's still thriving as much as it is today. Like, teenagers, just that's how they communicate, just through
Yeah.
Snapchat. That's
It's
crazy to me.
it's crazy to me, but it's also like I get it. You could do so much more now than I could. Like I was using
Yeah.
Snapchat stories like there's no tomorrow. And now it still reminds me, like when I re-downloaded the app
Oh, yeah.
recently, it was like this story. I'm like, I do not want to see what I was doing 9 years ago on this very day.
So
Thank
funny.
you.
Yeah.
But that's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you, even though you're somebody who maybe had a harder time not wanting to fail things, I feel like you've done a lot since high school and to where you are now. You've moved, obviously got married, you tried schooling, you tried different jobs and career paths, and were really open with where where you would be led to do, where God would take you, or what opportunities you would take. But yeah, how did you navigate stepping into so many new things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, yeah, even though I kind of felt dominated by a fixed mindset, I didn't feel like, oh, this is exactly what I need to do with my life. So I went to university. I took communications, and I think I took communications because I like to write and because it was like the type of degree that could go in a bunch of different directions. So I wasn't like stuck to one thing. And I thought what I would end up doing is working at a nonprofit and doing like all of their external communications. But in my last year, I got engaged to my husband Daniel, and within that last year, a position opened up at the church he was working at to help him direct the internship program he was directing within that church. And at first I was like, what? We couldn't work together. Like, married people can't work together.
Yeah.
And Daniel's like, what are you talking about? Like, the reason we want to get married is because we're a team and because we like want to be in ministry together, whether that's like vocational ministry in a church or not. And so I kind of like blew it off, but over the next few months, like God really tugged at my heart to consider the job at the church. And so I did. And then I met with like the pastor there and got interviewed and everything and ended up getting the job. And so Daniel and I led that internship program together for 3 years, which was like so fun, working with young adults like ages 18 to 25 and just walking with them on their discipleship journey. And that was really beautiful. And then just felt God calling us out of that chapter, not for any reason other than just like life was happening, and to move to the city of Vancouver. So before we were working on Vancouver Island in a place called Courtenay. It's like a smaller town. And then we moved to the city of Vancouver and I switched careers completely. I started working at a tech company. And I started out in marketing and then I moved into a bit of sales and now I'm in project management. So things have shifted a lot within the year I've been there. And I've learned a ton. Like, I am not a techie person. I am
She's
not
a late adopter for sure.
Yeah. And so like, it's been really cool to like, and really like empowering to be like, oh, I can learn this stuff and I can do this job. And it's been great. And so that's kind of what I'm up to now. But yeah, there's just been a bunch of different little things along the way.
Yeah. Do you find that it was such a big change to go from, okay, we're each other's coworkers, we're in a smaller town, like island life is just paced differently.
Yeah.
And you also were, like you were saying, running this program where everybody's in close community, doing everything together. And then now you're tech job Vancouver life, not each other's coworkers. How was that change?
It was so different, but I think God just really had his hand on it because the transition was really smooth. I think in a lot of ways I'm sad to not work with Daniel anymore because I love working with him. But it is pretty like fun at the end of the day, like coming home together. I don't know if you feel that, Cecilia, with Johnny, but it's like, it's just kind of like, it's special and you get to like talk about your days in a way that we didn't have before because we would have like been together all day.
We were both there, yeah.
Yeah. And so I really liked that. It was pretty challenging for me to move from like a ministry job where it's like your lifestyle and you're with people all the time to like pretty much remote work at home alone. That was a drastic change and it took some getting used to, but now I'm definitely used to it. I prefer to be around people, but it's just the season of life. And no, and city life, yes, it's a lot different than island life, but we are definitely more city people. So we enjoyed the island a lot, but we really enjoy living in Vancouver. It's like every day I walk outside and I'm just like, I feel so blessed to live here. So blessed. So it's pretty awesome.
That's so cool. I'm proud of you guys and just seeing
Thanks.
you be obedient to what you needed to do, because that's probably like us 10 years ago dreaming about our futures. I don't think we would have known we would end up doing what we're doing.
I know.
I don't even think we knew what we would do right after graduating. I feel like
I
we were in a
know.
limbo of like here or there, or like just waiting for an acceptance
Totally.
somewhere to decide, and then just to have a full switch of who you would marry and what your lifestyle would look like and where you would end up is so unknown. Do you have any advice for people who, because you've seen people choose to go and do the program that you guys were running, and that takes, a jump if you're not from the area, and then you've also taken the jump of like moving somewhere else, or just a jump to be like, I'm going to be young and get married and be committed. Do you have advice for people who are younger and like all the options are there and you feel maybe a tug to one, but how do you decide to actually follow through?
Oh yeah, it's so hard. I feel like it can be so easy to stress out about that and to be like, oh, what if I make the wrong decision? And I think the reality is if you have like a bunch of awesome decisions in front of you, and you feel if you're leaning towards one, then go for that one. And if not, like just move forward. And you can always, I think what I've realized is like you can always change your plan and you can always redirect. And like I feel like I've done so many different things since I've graduated university, but I feel like what's preached to high school students, and maybe it's changed now because the world has changed a lot. But when I was in high school, they kind of made it seem like you have to know what you want to do in school and you have to know what job you're going to have and you have to do that job for your whole life. Like you have to pick something you're going to love for your whole life. And like the reality is now you just don't. Like you can pick something you're kind of interested in, or you can think you're interested in something and be like, oh, that's not for me. And I don't think that's a waste of time.
No.
I think people get like young people get really caught up in wasting time, but I wouldn't worry about that. I'd say you have time and it's not wasting time because along the way you learned you did or didn't want to do something. And like, that's definitely valuable because you've learned something along the way.
Yeah. Even in like you doing sports a lot growing up, I don't feel like now just because you're not a competitive athlete, you're like, oh, that was a waste. But you learn leadership things. You learn how to be on a team, or going from ministry to tech. To some people, it'll be like, that was not the resume I wanted to get into the next role I wanted, but it worked out for you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And like, I think you can definitely work hard and make things happen and always take more school. And like, there's just so many different options out there, especially with like what you can learn online nowadays, that don't be afraid. I'd just say, just take a step forward and see where it goes.
Okay. So when it comes to, like you were saying, you can make a decision and then you can change it, and there's flexibility in that. What is that like when you're actually married, when you're one with somebody, and yes, you could just decide, text Daniel and say, oh, I'm actually quitting my job and I'm going to do this full time. Like, just do this big leap. Like, what does it look like when you're doing stuff together? And I know that you both have a heart for sharing what it's like being married and just advice and conversations and being open. And I've heard a lot of people say, oh, I won't give advice until I'm 10 years into marriage. But I do think that means that there's a very long gap of us not hearing real marriage talk, or just hearing it from very select sources. And I think that's not the reality of what we need. We need people to be open about their things, and it doesn't mean what works for you and Daniel is going to work for me and Johnny, or it doesn't mean it's going to work for somebody who's about to get married. But how do you guys make decisions as a household?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think something that's like in me and Daniel's favor is that we're like quite similar in like being on the same page for things. So that helps. But I'm thinking of when we were living on Vancouver Island. I was there for about a year or so, and Daniel had already been there for 3 years. And he was kind of feeling like, sensing like, oh, I'm kind of like wondering what's next for us. And Daniel's the type of like person that's always thinking the like 5-10 year plan. I'm not. I'm very much so like thinking about like what's happening right now. And so when he started to say that, I was like, what are you talking about? Like,
Just
I
got
just got
here.
here. Yeah. I just got here. And so, and I was able to explain, like, I just feel like I need another couple years to gain the leadership experience that God has for me here. And so he really Danny really understood that, and it ended up being like the best decision for both of us. And so it wasn't like he was fully compromising just because I wanted to stay. But that was definitely a moment where like he was sensing the like desire or idea, I guess, of moving to the next thing before I was ready. And I think that like in marriage, you just really need to be like flexible and considerate and willing to compromise maybe your expectation for life or your idea of what's happening, because the other person might not be there yet. And I'm sure there'll be other moments in life where like either Daniel's not ready to move on and I am, and I just have to stick it out. And I think that's okay. Like that's okay, and that's just like what marriage is. There's like give and take. But yeah, I would advise not to just go up and quit your job and then tell your spouse after. Probably don't do that. But
Yeah.
I think what's been really cool is like if I had a big dream and I wanted to chase after it, Daniel would be like, okay, that's awesome. Like, let's do it. Like, let's make a plan
How can
for
we make
it.
it happen? Yeah.
Yeah. How can we make it happen? Because he really believes in me and I really believe in him. And so finding someone like that that's really like believes in you and your giftings and wants to support you in your dreams, I think is super important. I feel like you probably experience that a lot with Johnny because you have big dreams and you're so creative.
Yeah.
And I see like just through social media and like knowing you guys, the way he supports you in small ways, but I'm sure he supports you in a lot of big ways behind the scenes too.
Yeah. It's interesting to think like that's the root of it, is you were looking for somebody who would support you and just like and cheer you on and believe in you, because finding somebody that you want to spend forever with. I mean, I got lucky because Johnny did go to our high school. I didn't know him very well, but like it helps with the background check. Like I didn't have to,
That's
you know,
true.
dig as much as I maybe needed to, or
Yeah.
test out the waters too much. Like once I really knew his character and like the main point. But I do think if I was giving advice to somebody or watching somebody who ended up, you know, dating someone they feel like didn't work out or that really did work out, it's usually the core of, didn't matter what they were doing in their career or in their choices, it really mattered that they loved who they were and believed in them. Because then when I go, Johnny, I want to write a kid's book so bad, like I've been dreaming of this my whole life, he's like, okay, like let's get out a paper, like let's do it. It's not, but I married somebody who likes marketing and like that's what you do, like you stick to
you
that.
You can't do anything outside of that.
Can't do anything outside. So I think the root, like that's really good advice on just the root of finding who you want to be with. Don't make it in like, we both play basketball, so like we're gonna get married because we love it and we're always gonna want to pursue basketball together, the gym together, because that might not be what somebody needs later on. And Johnny's definitely had to, you know, step into the world of like, what does it look like when I'm like, I want to even just like wear my hair curly. It's just been like this whole thing that he's embraced in and knows nothing about. Like just my freckled blue-eyed white boy has no idea what products to buy, but like for Christmas we'll go buy me what I need. Or when it comes to like skateboard ministry, like I just have this whole new love for a skate park and the use of a skate park, and that comes from somebody else. It didn't come from me just thinking about it my whole life. So
it's really special. You can kind of get on board with the other person's passions, and it really starts to become your own passion for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you for just being real. Well,
Of
all
course.
that. Yeah. Do you have a place that you would like anybody to find you if we want to connect or reach out? This is definitely a part one because I want you and Dan to come and talk about lots of things. But I'm thinking I should do like a
Yes.
Q&A. Like I should gather questions
Yes.
that people would want to ask you and your husband, and then we could do
Yeah,
that.
I'd love that. And I'd love for us to all do a double date. That would be so
Yeah,
fun.
I would love that too. Okay, where can people find you?
Daniel and I have a YouTube channel actually that I would love for you guys to check out if you're interested in just what we say about relationships and life,
Mhm.
married life, dating life, all of that. It's definitely from a like Christian perspective. And yeah, that's just Dan and Mariah Smith on YouTube. And then we're also on TikTok. It's just Dan and Mariah. And then you can find me on Instagram too, just Mariah Lucia Smith.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I'll link everything in the show notes, and
sweet.
definitely, even though it's coming from a Christian perspective, I feel like you can ask Mariah and Dan any question
Yeah.
about anything, and they have so many different like life perspectives and thoughts
Mm,
and friendships that would help them kind of answer or direct you in a place that you know that you might need if you need resources. And
totally.
yeah.
And we really want like our spaces on social media to be like a two-way discussion. So if you see any of our videos and you have like thoughts, please share them. Like we want it to be like more than just us talking. We want
Yeah.
it like lots of people to contribute to the conversation of relationships and dating and marriage because relationships and culture nowadays are so interesting and
So interesting.
could be defined by a lot of different things. And so, yeah, we just kind of want to keep that conversation going.
Yeah, and I can vouch that they will honestly accept whatever comments you have, or if you want them to elaborate on something, I can guarantee they probably will do it for you. So
Yeah.
reach
Yeah.
out to them and stay tuned because this is not the last of us hearing from Mariah. We are going to talk about lots of things when it comes to relationships and just even family dynamics, like you having a big family and you guys all just being such different people, and just our time out of high school 10 years later, what that looks like. And I'm
Totally.
excited for you and for the conversations that
Aw.
we'll have in the future too.
Thanks, Cece. Thanks for
Alrighty.
having me. This is
You're
so fun.
welcome. Yeah, it's just I like how casual it can be, especially if I know the people.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
been really fun. Well, have a good evening.
You
Okay,
too.
bye.
We'll talk soon. Bye.